afternoon and welcome everyone to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, and neighbors who are caring for someone. I'm Felicia Hart, and I will be your moderator for today. We'd like to begin this gathering by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet on a virtual platform with people joining us from across the province, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we all call home. I am coming to you from Clarington, Ontario, which is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa of the Anishinaabe, known today as the William Treaties First Nations. I came to be here through generations of immigration to this land. At the OCO, we are working to better understand how we can be meaningful allies and support the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our understanding of Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We invite you to take a moment to reflect on the land where you are. And after today's session, if you're not familiar with the history of your land, you can check out more information at nativeland.ca, which will be in the chat box. So we have an excellent webinar planned for you today. Our webinar is called Beyond Bubble Baths, a different perspective on self-care. Together, we will dive into what self-care really means, especially when you're busy caring for someone else, as for many caregivers, the term can feel unrealistic, overwhelming, or even out of reach. Today, we are joined by our speaker, Nicole Dauz. Nicole is a mother, caregiver, and advocate who believes the most important relationship we nurture is the one with ourselves. By honoring her own needs, mind, body, and soul, she has learned that self-care is the foundation of resilience and joy. As a caregiver coach, speaker, and author, Nicole has chosen happiness despite life's challenges. Her greatest teacher has been her lived experience as a mother of a 20-year-old neurotypical son and a 17-year-old daughter with profound autism and a rare genetic disease. Since 2019, Nicole has coached caregivers and facilitated webinars focusing on managing overwhelm. Nicole, we're so glad to have you here with us today. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Felicia, and welcome everyone who's watching or participating live or who's watching the replay. Felicia just explained, we're talking about a different perspective on self-care today. And the biggest takeaway I want is you have more choice than you think. So we're going to be exploring why self-care is such a provocative topic. We're going to challenge some of the common myths. We're going to reframe self-care as an act of self-worth and empowerment. We're going to speak about practical ways we can remove barriers to self-care. So before we begin, I really want to take the time to focus on you, the caregiver, right? For the next 45 minutes, this time is all about you. So silence notifications and distractions, close other tabs. My phone is off in another room. Grab some water, some tea. Take a deep breath and just give yourself permission to be fully present. How often in our day do we take time just for ourselves? And this is what this webinar is all about. But first, a little bit about me and why I'm so passionate about self-care. These two human beings. So my son Jordan is 20 and my daughter Summer, as Felicia noted in my bio, has profound autism, a rare genetic disease, and an intellectual disability. So while I'm talking and getting all excited about self-care and all of the ways that we can kind of pour into our cup and put ourselves first, please know that I'm 17 years in. But I want to take you back and help you understand the why. So I'm a working mother, and when I returned to work after my second mat leave, I thought all was well. I thought, a very healthy daughter, a son. So we call it, what's it called? The millionaire family, right? A son, a daughter, husband, therefore. It was only at my daughter's 12-month checkup where my doctor's like, I'm going to do a referral to the neurologist at the children's hospital because Summer wasn't sitting up and they weren't sure if she had soft muscle mass, etc. But my life changed in that moment. And we started weekly physical therapy so she could learn to walk at 2.5, and then weekly occupational therapy so she could learn to put on a sock and hold her spoon at 3.5. And then speech came much later. But you can see in this photo that she's very mobile now. This is on Mother's Day. Oh, no, it's not. Thanksgiving. I can tell by the colors in the tree. Sorry, Thanksgiving for our hike in Gatineau Park. But 6 years in, I was at work when I had a full-on panic attack. And what I mean is, all of a sudden, it was hard to breathe. And I had a bang on the desk, and someone knew immediately that I was in trouble. They called the ambulance, and yes, I was taken to the hospital. And in the 90 minutes that it took me to see a doctor, my pain subsided, my breathing resumed, and I was fine. The doctor took my vitals and was like, okay, you're good. But I knew that what had happened wasn't normal and wasn't right. And I refer to as that my body was talking to me and sending a signal. And I am very grateful that I listened in that moment. Because on the way to the hospital in the ambulance, I just thought, my daughter's only 6. I have an ultra marathon ahead of me of taking care of her. And so that's when I decided to make small changes. At that time, it was simply one activity a week for me, but I decided to put myself first. And when I'm talking to you today, it's 10 years in on after having made that decision. So now we get to turn it over to you because that's why we're here to celebrate you. I would love for you to put in the chat. When you hear the phrase self-care, do you see it as empowering, frustrating, both, or neither? So okay, thank you. One person put both, one person put frustrating. I love the honesty in that. Oh, we've got both, some frustrating and some both. Okay, that's great. And I wonder if it could also be where you are in that day. Like we all know, I'll say caregiving is challenging, and now what? Right? So if you're one of those seasons of caregiving where you're having a good day, I've the majority of people in the chat are putting both and frustrated. And you are exactly right. It can be. So, starting with you, your why, based on those responses, what are you hoping will be different after today's session? For example, people don't want self-care, they want what self-care will give them. So, are people here today because they want more patience? Ooh, I love it. Someone put less guilt. There's that word. Caregiving and guilt. It's almost like they're packaged. They always come together. Someone says, find a way to better balance in my life between caregiving and self-care, or sorry, self-loving. To acknowledge that self-care isn't a quick fix. Oh, I love that one. More clarity, trust, rest, less guilt, not being selfish, room to breathe. I love it. And permission. Oh, thank you for putting that word in the chat, because that's actually another thing we're going to be talking about during this webinar. And so, yes, self-care isn't about what we do, it's the why, right? The more patience, the more energy, the more joy, right? Better health, less resentment, and that more peace. So thank you for sharing that in the chat. And going back to what I said earlier, why is caregiving so darn challenging? Here is a caregiver emotion word cloud, right? We see exhausted, stressed, overwhelmed, burned out, frustrated, anxious. Now, I always have to say, yes, there are certainly moments of love and joy in caregiving. However, we are not here on this webinar because our lives are full of rainbows and butterflies. It is very challenging. And these are all of the emotions that we experience. And I say we because it is a collective. And with all of the coaching that I have done, caregivers say over and over again, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I'm frustrated, I'm resentful. And I don't know about you, but these could be my emotions within 1 hour. So imagine if you extrapolate that to 1 day, to 1 week, to 1 year, etc. And what's really important is that there's no right or wrong way to feel, right? When these emotions come up, they don't want to be buried or made to feel bad. They're literally our body, our internal GPS just saying, "Ah, this is just how you're feeling." So, where can we get to a place where we don't feel bad about being stressed or resentful for caregiving? Caregiving is a role. And I always say, I never signed up for this, but it's something I would never not do. And this is where we really need to be gentle with ourselves. The why care, self-care feels so hard. Society certainly doesn't help on this one, right? In social media, we have all of these pictures and it has become quite capitalized. So we're being told how we should act or what activities equal self-care. So if you could kindly put in the chat, what are the top 1 or 2 reasons you tell yourself about why you can't prioritize self-care? I know for me at the very beginning of my journey as a caregiver, I always went, time. Oh, I don't have the time for self-care. People around me need more care than I do. I don't have the time or energy or even, oh, wow, one person put that they don't deserve it. Another person put that they've been taught that caring for always comes first. Someone put too expensive, lack of support, daughter is medically compromised. Another one said it feels wrong. Again, guilt, there's that word again. And all of these feelings, these reasons that we're telling ourselves, they're real, right? But they're also what's preventing us. And so if we go back to feeling like we're in have more control than we realize. Oh, and someone said other things seem more important, right? What could be more important than you? And because caregiving is a role, I say sometimes it feels like a cape that is just so, so heavy. When I say you can find time for yourself, I don't mean that you haven't tried and that the caregiving journey that you're on isn't overwhelming and stressful. It's just planting seeds of, as a caregiver, where can we take back that control? I know for me personally, it felt like everything was ripped from my control. And all of a sudden, I had this life that was not what I had anticipated or ever imagined. But little by little, as we'll see through this webinar, if we start looking at how we can take care of ourselves, how we can care for ourselves, how we can find those moments to say, oh, but I do deserve it. These are all the small changes that can add up to really big differences. self-care myths. So very similar to what you shared. So thank you. I need hours of free time. So from society, right? If you're going to the spa, if you're going out for dinner, if you're going on vacation, of course you would need hours of free time. Don't get me wrong. Those things aren't wrong, and I certainly have done them. When I'm talking about self-care, I'm looking at it from a day-to-day lens. How can you start to think of it as not these big things, but the small things? I imagine you experience this in life too, right? Whether it's on not a holiday, but a like around if you celebrate Christmas, if around Christmas, right? Sometimes people focus on the gifts. And then it's in those moments where we're just sitting around the table, sharing a meal, sharing stories. You realized, oh yeah, it's the small things during the holidays that make it really, really special. Myth number two, I need to leave the house. That was me. I always told myself I needed to leave the house. And now I just kind of laugh at myself, and that's okay. Myths are myths. Myth number three, I need to hire respite first. I had a caregiver who at the time couldn't even leave the room of the person she was caring for because of the complex needs of her child. So it's like, how do we even introduce the concept of self-care when you tell yourself, I'm stuck? Myth number four, I need to spend money, right? I need to bring someone in to look after the person I'm caring for. I need to go for dinner. I need to do this. I need to do that. No. And even if you sign up to the gym, you don't need to go buy new workout clothes. All of these small things that we don't realize are like, these are just stories that we're telling ourselves. And then sadly, there's lots of people who are just like, other caregivers are just luckier than me that they get to do that. And some of you may be looking at me saying that thing, it would be nice if. So it's how do we soften that? And how do we turn it to I can't to how can I? Where are those small moments, those opportunities that could be there hiding that you just haven't noticed before? And an example of that, what if joy were more accessible than self-care? So, before we get to the question in the chat, my philosophy around self-care is there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's accessible to everyone. You can't judge it because what brings me joy may not bring you joy because self-care is ultimately anything that brings you joy as long as long as it's legal. But yes, it can be that easy. And so the question for the chat is, does joy feel more accessible to you than self-care? So if I were to say, what activity brings you joy, does that feel lighter than what self-care activities can you find? Oh, I love it. So far we've got 2 yeses in the chat. Thank you for that. Okay, we've got some more yeses. Okay, so this is that opportunity. Oh, I love it. Thank you. It is an interesting question because it speaks to the stories we can tell ourselves that we don't even realize. So when I wrote my book around self or on self-care, it was exactly that. It was about what if we took this word that is so loaded, where it can frustrate people, it can empower people, it can excite people, but a lot of times it triggers people. What if we were simply to say, oh, self-care is literally anything that brings me joy? For some reason, that was like a green light for people to be like, oh, well, that does make it certainly more accessible. Yes, and the aha of where in your moment Can you find joy? And it's something about the word as well. It's just very light and freeing. So, a specific example that I have is the power of music, because there are enough categories of music to suit all tastes. I have two older brothers, and I grew up, they were very, very like my one brother is like Metallica and very hard metal, and another's an alternative, and I'm more R&B and pop, no judgment. But whenever we listen to music, it just brought something out in us, right? We find we're snapping our fingers, tapping our feet, and unknowingly we have this energy moving in us. And I know for me, if I'm feeling in a funk, I I have my go-to songs. I will go in the bathroom, 5 minutes, dance in front of the mirror, sing, and I always feel better, right? You cannot stay in a bad mood after dancing to your favorite song. And like that is actually joy happening in a really small moment. So that's a very concrete example of the power of music. And I don't know about whom you're caring for, but thankfully, my daughter loves music. And it has been something that I've used to connect us. So before she started speaking at 13, before she could speak, she could hum and imitate words, but we always had music on. And it was also something that I used to calm her, but also myself. And it was something that we could do together. Back to everything is a choice. What's really important here is from an empowerment perspective. When I'm asking these questions, when we look, how do we learn to look back with curiosity and not with judgment? So, how we choose to speak to ourselves is a choice. How we choose to attach meaning to certain situations is a choice. How we choose whether or not we're worthy is a choice. And of course, that word, whether we choose to give ourselves permission. So, how we choose to speak to ourselves. Now, I think it's also important to state, when do we actually take the time to sit down and ask ourselves these questions? So I applaud you for participating in this webinar, because this is part of one of those venues where you're like, okay, I'm going to take a minute. How do you speak to yourself? Probably not as nice as you would hope. And the nice thing is we can change that, right? We can, moving forward, once we recognize, oh, ouch, sometimes I'm not very kind to myself. We can make a decision, okay. And even having this discussion now and asking that question, who knows? It could be later today or tomorrow where a negative thought enters your mind, and now you're going to be mindful of it or aware in a manner you weren't before. How we choose to attach meaning to situations. So when my daughter was younger and I was really in the thick of it and like treading water, feeling so overwhelmed, even people with good intentions, I would say stupid things to me. And I say stupid because that's how I interpreted them, right? That's the meaning I gave to them. But little by little, the more I learned to give myself moments of joy, I was able to find more self-compassion for myself, which then allowed me to gift other people compassion. And in that moment, I was able to say, you know, Nicole, give people grace, because unless you're in it as a caregiver, how do you ever explain to somebody the profound frustration or challenges or unknowns or fear and worry that we live? And then I would remind myself that before I was a caregiver, I probably was one of those people that said stupid things to other caregivers without any bad intention. So now when people say something and I'm kind of like, ah, I'll just be like, remember, Nicole, they don't know. And it's not their fault that they don't know. And I just grace them or like go to what's their intention. Whether or not we're worthy, we are going to be touching on this a little later in some slides, but just know you're worthy, like point blank. And then from that worthiness, we can start to give ourselves some more permission to, wow, to take care of ourselves. On paper, it sounds so silly to say, I give myself permission. But when we're in the thick of it, right? When we are in caregiving mode, caregiving is a role. So I've been a mother for 20 years and a caregiver for 17, but I've been Nicole for 53. So how do I learn to honor Nicole? And that's what I've been doing for 10 years. And every day is a new day, and I get to remind myself I am worthy. And depending on the season of caregiving, right? When we were in crisis, I didn't have as much time to focus on self-care or those moments of joy. But now we're in a really good stretch. So I can take more time. So we are going to do a mindful activity now because I want to show you and have you experience how easy and accessible it is. So we're going to do box breathing. Box breathing is where we're going to breathe in, hold, breathe out, and then hold. So we're going to do 4 seconds for each one, and I will guide you through it. So if you feel comfortable where you are, close your eyes. I always put my hand on my heart. And so we're going to breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Just keep your eyes closed and let your breathing resume to normal. Okay, now you can open your eyes. So I would love for you to share in the chat, what do you notice after taking 2 minutes for yourself of that mindful breathing? You feel lighter. So the cool thing about the breathing exercise is our brains can't do 2 things at once. So when you were focused on your breathing, your mind couldn't worry, your mind couldn't fret, you couldn't be stressed. And so it's like you give your mind a little bit of a break from that worry or the to-do list with caregiving or the to-do list with life or what you need. So that's an example that I wanted you to experience of how 2 minutes can make you feel lighter. People are sharing in the chat, calm. Oh, one person said they were shocked at how tight their chest felt and they didn't realize it. And that's a sense, that mindfulness of just going in and checking. I was not thinking about anything, just listening to the count. Yes. And I call that breathing exercise something that I can put in my back pocket and take with me anywhere I go. So if you have to travel with your person you're caring for, or you're hosting family and you find your heartbeat rising and you're getting a little stressed, this is a moment of joy or a self-care activity where you can just reset. And you can do it in the bathroom with the door closed and no one will ever know. So, worthiness. Here's another big word, just in case self-care doesn't grab you. Worthiness. So often we associate our value with what we do. Do you believe that you are valuable just as you are, right? In that you are more than a caregiver. So for those people in the chat, you are worthy, right? The moment you were born, and you've carried that worthiness with you until now. It's just crap. Stuff gets piled on. People tell us stuff. And depending how you were raised, where you were raised, what kind of messages you were receiving, often it could be don't be cocky, don't be conceited, share your toys, give to others, make sure others, we're in instances told or even shown, depending on how we were raised, that we put others' needs before our own. And again, there are extremes in both cases, but it goes back to we don't bring value, and our worth is never by what we give to others. It's simply granted to us. Like, what a gift to be alive. Finding pockets of time. So, based on that worthiness, if you could kindly put on the chat, how does time feel when you think of a day having 1,440 minutes instead of 24 hours? How does that change your perspective of time? If you put, yeah, someone said seems like a lot more time, seems longer. No, I know. When I came across that, I was like 1,440. Like, who knew I had access to all of this time? And for how long have I saying, I need more time? If there only had more time, I only had more time. And so this is an opportunity if we flip that switch from I can't to how can I? And exactly, it's pockets of time, right? We don't need the hour at the gym or going out for dinner. In your home, can you find 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of time every day? Why? Because you're worthy and you do deserve it. The examples that I put or have shared on the slide. So for 5 minutes, opportunities look like deep breathing, music, tea, a nice hot tea, or stretching. 10 minutes, walk around the block, journaling, or reading. And 15 minutes could be a bath, meditation, or you call a friend and you check in. For some people who have told themselves that self-care, moments of joy aren't accessible, or they didn't appreciate that they were even there kind of hiding, these are examples. Feel free to borrow mine. And then what happens is people try it, and then it's like they give themselves permission to even think bigger, right? Sometimes they'll say to people, what did you enjoy doing as a child? And for some people, like, oh, I used to paint, right? Oh, or I used to like write poems, or I used to knit, right? These are all like opportunities to be like, oh yeah, why did I stop doing this or why did I stop doing that? And yeah, that did bring me joy. Like let your heart guide you. Like when you think of an activity and you're like your heart smiles, oh, that's the clue. Like, maybe I can try that one thing again. So, what questions are coming up for you right now? Feel free to add it in the chat. So, based on that, if you had a permission slip, complete the sentence, right? I give myself permission to someone. Okay, in the chat, we have, oh, I love it, permission to be yourself. Another person wrote, currently working on finding those pockets of time. Permission to relax, to take time out to relax. Oh, that's a very interesting perspective. Relax. The irony that sometimes it is so hard to do nothing, that the very thing we want, right? As a caregiver, it would be like my to-do list is endless, right? If we go back to that word cloud, I feel stressed, I feel overwhelmed, I feel burnt out. Someone else put feel all my feelings. Is we tell ourselves all I would love to do is rest and do nothing. And then we find it so hard because we're in constant go mode. Sometimes you say, fight or flight or hypervigilant. And we've trained ourselves of always putting others first. So sometimes the first or second time we're learning to do these activities of joy, we're learning to put ourselves first, it can feel very unnatural. So one of my favorite self-care tips is like, put your phone away, turn off the TV, sit on a chair for 5 minutes and do nothing. And I have had so many people tell me that is the hardest thing because what happens? Their mind is like, well, you should be doing this and you can be doing this and you can be doing this. You're so lazy. You're taking 5 minutes. And I share that so you feel human, right? This is so natural. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just you are literally building a new muscle. If you have been telling yourself you're not worthy, you don't deserve it. Okay. In the chat, people are sharing. Oh, okay. We've got an Italian. Dolce fam. Oh, I better. There's just an expression that means doing nothing in Italian. Okay. It feels radical to rest. Ooh, radical. Yes, radical to rest, not just on weekends, but in daily life. To pause without guilt, move slowly, and let beauty land. That is so true, right? How do you get to a place where rest is not synonymous with lazy? That it's just giving yourself a break. And even in those moments where maybe it's not just sitting on the sofa and doing nothing, maybe it is doing a breathing exercise. Because then, as we just learned and experienced, your brain is preoccupied, whether counting or focused on your breath, that it's not going to override you with, you should be doing laundry, you should be cooking, you have to make another appointment. Did you finish that paperwork? Oh, you have to sign up for this. So it's like, how do we be so gentle? Someone wrote in the chat, find out who I am and what I'm worth beyond being a caregiving. That is so true. When we go back to like what we wanted to take away from this webinar is that shift in perspective. I, yes, you are a caregiver, but it is a role. And what I'm worth beyond being a caregiver. Do you believe that you are worthy of a meaningful life while on this caregiving journey? Yes. And the answer is you are more than worthy. And it's how do you find pockets of your day, right? Of the person you're caring for is safe, they're fine, you're okay to take whether it be 5 minutes or whether it be 10 minutes, guilt-free. And I can tell you with my daughter, it is something that you do over time. So now for our closing visualization. I would love you to, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And I want you to picture your best friend. And if you don't have a best friend, if you have a pet, just someone who means the most to you, if you're rock. Okay? Now I want you to imagine that you are on a beach with that person. Okay? There's a picture of the beach. So you can hear the sound of the waves, they're crashing in. You can hear the wind through the palm trees. You can smell the salt water. You've just had a wonderful pina colada. You can taste it. So you are immersed in all of your senses. Now I want you to picture yourself on the beach. You are with one of your favorite people in the world. Now I want you to imagine that that person has just shared the funniest joke and is laughing. And you are laughing. And I want you to imagine the sounds of belly laughs of you two in pure joy and in laughter. There are no worries. And you are simply experiencing connection and one of the best gifts that there is in the world, right? Joy, laughter, a good belly laugh. And I just want you to take a moment and be aware, how does that feel internally, right? Where is it your heart that's exploding? Is it your stomach? How does that feel in that moment? And then I want you to open your eyes and I want you to ask yourself, did you go to that place? That exercise was the power of the mind. You know, you're sitting on a chair in front of a computer, but we just went to a beach and we kind of immersed all of our senses. And then you pictured your loved one beside you and you heard the laughter and you felt what it felt like to have those belly laughs. And that is an example of how powerful the mind is. So when we're talking about worth, when we're talking about what we deserve self-care, that is the power of the mind where we can make a conscious decision and override those negative thoughts that, yes, I am worthy. So the final reflection for today is if you could kindly share in the chat, What is the one thing you are taking away from today to help inspire the other caregivers? Please put that in the chat because self-care is not about becoming someone different. So, someone put in the chat, I am worthy of so much more, and I've given myself permission to be another caregiver. Caregiving is my role, not my identity. Yes, to be more compassionate with myself. Exactly. I love that. Mindfulness is important daily. Oh, thank you. Someone said they love the I can't to how can I. Self-care doesn't need to be so in depth. Yes. Oh, I love that part because I know sometimes I'll like catch myself and I'll be, when did life get so serious? And I have to remind myself to be like, Nicole, just lighten up. It's okay. And that's like my maritime humor coming out. Like I need to like check myself and learn to laugh because just caregiving can be really hard and we can still laugh and find lightness in it. And I think that's part of it as well, holding place for both. Oh, I love it. Give yourself grace, honoring yourself, mental rest in situations that you can use. Exactly. And so now we get to go into the Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to welcome Felicia and we're going to do a Q&A session.
Nicole, thank you so very much for the presentation today. Just reading what people are reflecting on after connecting on this topic and the time that you've been able to give us in creating that safe space of just being honest about what gets in the way of finding that joy, what gets in the way of making that time, and just seeing how people now are taking that away today and reflecting on how they can take these practical next steps that are really within reality. Like the things that you shared, they can actually be taken into each person's reality and you can actually do something with it. It's not pie in the sky. It's not this big thing to work towards. These are really simple things that we can take away today. So I just want to thank you so very much for taking the time today and providing us with this.
Oh, my pleasure. As you can tell, I love this stuff, right? I'm like, my daughter is, yes, I practice it daily and that's okay.
So now we're going to get into our official Q&A to keep this conversation going. I know that some people have taken the opportunity to use our chat to filter in some questions. We're going to start there, but we have time. We have about 10 minutes left together. So if some questions have bubbled up after Nicole has walked us through this interactive session today, please feel free to pop those in the
Yeah.
chat. One question, Nicole, that came up while you were speaking earlier was a caregiver just said, sometimes I think about my life after being a full-time caregiver, renovations I want to do, travel I'd love to make happen. Is this wrong? And I'm wondering if this kind of ties into what we did around the technique around visualization, and those feelings of guilt. I feel like that kind of plays into that, what we've examined together as a group earlier. What would be your comments on like how people visualize themselves even after caregiving?
Oh, after caregiving, as in the
They're
role
thinking
is no,
about, yeah,
okay.
they're thinking sometimes, I think sometimes when people are looking for joy in their life, this is what I took from the comment. It's kind of like they're thinking about what they would do if they weren't a caregiver, essentially. What are the things that they would do? And I think what we're trying to get at here is how that can sometimes be linked to those feelings of guilt, because the question is this
Oh,
wrong to think about what I'd be doing if I wasn't caregiving?
oh, okay. No, that's so human. And that's why I love these sessions is, those are things that you wouldn't dare share to someone who's not a caregiver because they wouldn't understand it. And I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's if in our caregiving role, how do we create space for us to do things on our own? And that is normal. And if possible, like, please do. And then if your caregiving role has changed and you're trying to figure out what life looks like, okay, life after, thank you for clarification on that. Life after caring for your elderly mom. I would, there's a wonderful group called Caregiver Connections, and they focus on bereavement. And so they would be able to offer, to really speak to that piece. I have a good friend who is a caregiver, and she spoke a lot about anticipatory grief. And she said she wished that she had just enjoyed the time with her mom while she was aging instead of fearing the end, if that makes sense. So then when she did that bereavement, I think it's very normal to know like what those different parts of your life are. Like, sorry, chapters, right? Like even for me, my daughter's going to be 21 and we call it the cliff, which means she's no longer in school. So thankfully in Ontario, she can stay in her special program until 21. I know my life will look very different then, but I have some time and a buffer. So I'm being really gentle with myself. And I'm like, park that. And once you get closer, and so for the person in the chat who asked that question about after caring for your elderly mom, this is where you're really compassionate and just say, it's okay to be like, this is the time where I get to really put myself first, right? Depending on where you are in your caregiving journey, sometimes we need to be much more present and we can find we lose ourselves a little. And then other times we're like, okay, like they're, the person is good or they're in a good spot. So now you feel like you have more time to breathe. I think it's just finding those resources where be like, okay, at that stage, what would be a good person to reach out to an organization that can help me walk through that?
Thank you, Nicole. It's so helpful. Really appreciate you considering that
Uh,
one.
yes.
We have another question about just reflecting on what was shared today. One person said these are great first steps and they want
Yeah.
to get ahead of things. Like, do you have any suggestions of where they could go next, kind of plan for their future with the principles that you've shared with us today?
Sorry, I have so many thoughts. And no, I'm just laughing because I'm like, that is such a human thing to do. I would gently say, start with making sure you have a solid footing now. Like from a foundational, like I would say, do you experience moments of joy daily? Right? I think it's like that's like the project management in us as caregivers. No, no, but what's the next step? But I'm like, okay, but how are you now at this step? Like, do you kind of feel good? And then I would be like, well, if you can find moments of joy every day, if it's 10 minutes, can you like get it to 15? Or can you find two pockets of 10 minutes in a day? I would look at it through that lens and also really talking about that narrative piece. So from a next step, the biggest thing for me was once I became aware of my own thoughts, like that's been almost like a full-time job. You know what I mean? Like trying to be nice to myself every morning. And so that's what I would say is the next step.
Some thanks. I think sometimes when people are embarking on something, they want to know like what would be potentially the next step. So that is incredibly helpful for sure.
Yeah. And like, yeah, it's I'm like laughing at myself because I'm so that person. Um, and
We have
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Nicole.
I was just going to really speak to, and you're not prying at all, like kind of the what changed for me. And it was that trip. I'm not sure if you heard my intro. It was that trip on in the ambulance when my daughter was only 6. Because yes, I had been a caregiver for 6 years, but I looked at it as in, oh my gosh, I'm only 6 years in, and I've got decades ahead of me. So that was the pivotal moment for me. And I say it was a knock at the door, and it wasn't someone kicking down the door. Like it could have been worse, like from my body kind of like saying, Nicole, you need to do something different. So that was it. That was the aha.
Thank you for that. You see the other question that just popped up in the chat there, I think, around um, one of our caregivers, their mom passed
Oh,
unexpectedly.
if someone could put the resource, the caregiver connection, I'm so sorry for your loss. And that, as I said, is specifically a bereavement group run, from my understanding, by caregivers, because I know some of them who support other caregivers through this exact thing. What happens to your identity and your life when you have been devoting your time to a loved one and then they pass? There are also parents in that group, and so that would be a good resource to walk you through that because that's not something I have experienced.
That's fair. And we've also at OCO developed a change in caregiver identity support group,
That's
actually.
right.
And we're going to
Oh,
get some information in the chat on there. But because we've been hearing this from caregivers a lot, that our caregiving can change for so many different reasons. Sometimes it's linked to grief and bereavement because the person has passed. Other times it's because there's been some sort of a shift or a change. So this definitely, I just want the person that shared that to know that this is something that a lot of caregivers share. So that's another resource that we can suggest as well.
thank you for that. Yes.
But Fiona also put in the caregiver grief connection that you've mentioned too in the chat. So that's great.
And one thing I just would add, even though, as I said, I have not experienced that specifically, I would just say be gentle with yourself because you've used the word normal. And what I do know is that caregiving has changed me profoundly. And I don't think that you can become a caregiver and then you don't go back to who you were. You carry that and you just become a more textured person with more experience under your belt. Yeah.
I honestly think that's the perfect way to finish today's session is that caregiving does change us. And we could be a different version of ourselves through this experience in many different ways. And I think with what you've brought to us today, Nicole, we have some really key areas that we can focus on to find that time for us, to find that time to care for ourselves and to find those moments of joy. So I just want to again thank you so very much for today's session. It's been amazing, so
Thank
interactive, and
you.
thank you to all of our participants
Yes,
in
thank you.
joining us and making the time today. From what you've shared in the chat, it really seems like you've got some nice things to walk away with. So we're so glad that's the case.